Holy Gospel from St. John, the second chapter. Glory to you, O Lord. On the third day there was a wedding in Cana of Galilee, and the mother of Jesus was there. Jesus and his disciples had also been invited to the wedding. When the wine gave out, the mother of Jesus said to him, "They have no wine." Jesus said to her, "Woman, what concern is that to you and to me? My hour has not yet come." His mother said to the servants, "Do whatever he tells you." Now standing there were 6 stone water jars for the Jewish rites of purification, each holding 20 or 30 gallons. Jesus said to them, "Fill the jars with water." And they filled them up to the brim. He said to them, "Now draw some out and take it to the chief steward." So they took it. When the steward tasted the water that had become wine and did not know where it came from, though the servants who had drawn the water knew, the steward called the bridegroom and said to him, "Everyone serves the good wine first, and then the inferior wine after the guests have become drunk. But you have kept the good wine until now." Jesus did this, the first of his signs in Cana of Galilee, and revealed his glory. And his disciples believed in him. The gospel of the Lord. Praise to you, O Christ. You may be seated. Let us pray. Lord Jesus, you turn the water into wine. You turn the darkness into light. And you turn death into life. You transform our lives. And so we pray this day, by the power of your Spirit, we might once again be transformed by your presence among us. Amen. The gospel reading for today gives us the account of Jesus, what is called the first miracle, when he turned the water into wine at the wedding in Cana of Galilee. Jesus did this, the first of his signs, the first of many signs in John's gospel, and revealed his glory, and his disciples believed in him. In the Gospel of John, the miracles of Jesus are called signs. They point, like signposts, to the true meaning of who Jesus is. The first sign, taking place on the third day, points forward to the climactic sign, which would also take place on the third day. And as you will remember, on the third day, Jesus was raised from the dead. We get to know God, the full revelation of God, through Jesus. And as you heard today in this gospel, I'm sure you noticed that Jesus is revealed to people who have run out of what they need to celebrate. It would have been unthinkable, a terrible, unforgivable situation for a household in this day and age to run out of wine at a wedding feast. The miraculous nature of this miracle turning water into wine is this stunning reversal from emptiness to extravagance. Everyone knows winemaking takes time. It's a process. It takes time. It doesn't happen instantly. You can't make wine like you make lemonade. The steward of the wedding feast knew this too. And that's why when he tasted the water become wine, he had no idea where it came from. Eugene Lowry suggests that there are two kinds of knowing in our lives. One kind of knowing is when, for example, you work on a complicated problem, like a math problem or a computer problem, and you solve the problem and you say, I got it. And the other kind of knowing is when you attend some really good movie or very good play and you come out of the theater changed, gripped by this experience, and you are different because of it, and you say, it got me. This is the kind of knowing that's involved for the disciples in this sign that Jesus did in Cana of Galilee. The revelation that Jesus gives is like taking a hopeless, empty situation and transforming it to a life-giving, filled with hopefulness. It got me. Have you ever had such an experience of Jesus' grace? I saved this Christmas letter that we received. It was a little different from most letters. It's a letter from Lori, who was from a previous congregation I served early in my ministry. Lori has been serving on the Capital Appeal leadership team for a building expansion of their church building, working hard to raise the needed money, which has been challenging and sometimes even discouraging. Anyway, Lori sent a picture, actually a series of pictures, of a special gift given by a family whose own small country church had closed in order to merge with the church in town that was now putting on this building addition. Now you can imagine the loss of their small country church was a painful loss. It had been the place of family baptisms, confirmations, weddings, funerals. So not everyone was happy about this move to the town church. Not everyone was supportive. Some people were fighting it, still fighting it. This unresolved loss. It was an emptiness in their lives. However, this one family, which had been a part of this small country church, which had closed and moved to town, this one family donated a 1946 Chevy two-door Fleetmaster, 54,000 actual miles, for the campaign. Mint condition. To auction or be sold outright. The proceeds given to the capital campaign. Along with the donation of the car, the family had written a letter to the congregation. Lori read the letter in church. She said, I tried to read it. Until I reached the part where they wrote about God's plan for our lives when we experience loss. Despite having read the letter to myself a great number of times, she said, during the week leading up to that Sunday morning, I was unable to finish it. We might say it got her. Those words struck a chord in my heart, she said, holding a special meaning for me because of the loss of my brother Michael. I will admit, it took several years for me to be able to go to church again after his death, when he died at the age of 32. And someone even once said to me that they thought I was a non-believer. My response was, I'm a believer, but I'm a disillusioned believer. I still struggle. But I know the community of faith will help make me strong again. The revelation of God in Jesus in the very first miracle at the wedding in Cana is to people who have run out of what they need to celebrate. And to all those who have ever experienced this kind of loss, this kind of running out, Jesus comes, still working miracles that act as signs of God's abiding presence and transforming grace. You can imagine how this transformed the Capitol Appeal in this congregation. The new age of the kingdom is ever breaking into our lives. Right in the midst of the old, generosity in the midst of perceived scarcity, joy in the midst of grief and pain, hope in the midst of despair. And Jesus fills the wedding feast with not just a little bit of wine, but 120 to 180 gallons of wine. Far more than any one wedding celebration could possibly drink. The disciples had their eyes opened to the glory of Jesus, the glorious giver. It got them. They believed. And such recognition in our lives, when we are seized by this awareness of God's goodness and grace, coming in Jesus, giving us what we don't deserve, is pure grace. It's all gift. And we cannot control such moments. We can only bow in wonder, adoration, at God's miraculous gift of faith. You got me, Jesus. You got me. And in John's Gospel, as we read along, we realize that's the whole intent. By chapter 20 in John's Gospel, in verse 30, we read, Jesus did many other signs in the presence of his disciples, which are not written in this book. But these are written, including this first sign at the wedding in Cana, that you may believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, and that believing you may have life in his name. And this sign at Cana happened on the third day. The third day, the day of Jesus' resurrection. This miracle of life-giving, joy-bringing wine is the sign of the great miracle, the big one, when Jesus gave himself to be crucified, sacrificed for you and for me to save us out of love for us and the world. Gave himself to be crucified and buried, and then on the third day being raised to make all things new. So already now, in the midst of all that is empty, in the midst of all that is running out in your life or mine, in the midst of what's painfully lost, in the midst of what's unfixable, or unchangeable. In our lives, the new creation, marked by Jesus' resurrection, is now breaking in. Thanks be to God.